There's a reason some wartime manuals were burned or redacted before they ever reached the public. During World War II, field engineers and resistance fighters created traps so devastatingly efficient that even their own commanders questioned their ethics and long-term safety. One of these devices was so feared for its simplicity and effectiveness that it was later scrubbed from Allied and Axis training records alike. The weapon wasn't chemical, wasn't electrical. It was mechanical, crude, and silent. It relied entirely on the physics of human movement and the psychology of surprise. This is the story of the step snare, a forgotten field trap that turned the terrain itself into a weapon, and why modern survivalists can still learn from it without ever crossing the line into harm. The original step snare was designed in occupied territories by local resistance fighters who had no access to firearms or mines. They needed something that could stop patrols, slow advancing troops, or protect supply caches without revealing their position. What they developed was a trap that weaponized the ground underfoot. It worked by disguising a shallow pit with a natural covering, twigs, leaves and soil, supported by a light lattice made from split bamboo or flexible saplings. Beneath it lay a sharpened stake, angled upward, often hardened in fire or coated with oil to prevent rotting. When the victim stepped onto the cover, it collapsed just enough for the leg to drop, driving the stake upward. The design wasn't meant to kill instantly. It immobilized, which made it far more effective tactically. A wounded soldier required immediate attention, exposing others to fire or delaying entire units. Its genius wasn't in the damage it caused, but in how it disrupted train movement and morale. After the war, military researchers called these psychological choke points, weapons that inflicted fear disproportionate to their size or cost. That was the real danger. Troops began to hesitate when walking through forests or tall grass. Panic spread faster than bullets. Because of this, by 1947, most Allied engineering handbooks deleted references to step snares, spike pits, and related devices, labelling them inhumane traps unfit for standard instruction. Every effective field trap works on two universal truths. People trust the ground they walk on, and they follow paths of least resistance. The World War II engineers knew that terrain could be shaped to exploit those instincts. The step snare worked because it didn't look like a trap. It looked like the safest place to step. Soldiers were trained to avoid obvious hazards, not to question solid-looking soil. In survival terms, this principle still holds immense value. Modern-day homesteaders or survivalists can apply this knowledge ethically for defensive landscaping and home security. The idea isn't to harm, it's to delay, detect and deter. For instance, a perimeter filled with uneven, noisy terrain, gravel, dry leaves or boards that crunch underfoot, can make silent approach impossible. Similarly, pathways that seem like shortcuts but lead into bottlenecks or lighted zones can channel intruders toward areas you can monitor safely. The key takeaway from the World War II design isn't violence, it's terrain manipulation. The ground can be your first line of defense if you understand how movement and instinct interact. One of the cleverest aspects of these World War II traps was their ability to blend into the environment. Resistance groups didn't have wire, nails or industrial supports, so they used what nature offered. They layered moss over woven grass mats sprinkled natural debris to match surrounding soil colour, and studied local erosion patterns so the trap didn't look freshly dug. In peaceful or modern survival settings, this same observational discipline translates directly to effective camouflage and concealment. If you want to protect stored gear, for example, a small root cellar or emergency supply cache can be disguised using similar principles: natural coverings, colour blending, and texture matching. Learning from these World War II tactics can teach today's preppers the importance of visual uniformity. Nothing new, nothing shiny, nothing out of place. When practiced ethically, these lessons become valuable survival tools rather than weapons. After 1945, military archives across Britain and the United States, purged large sections of unconventional warfare manuals. Anything resembling improvised traps, poisons, or punji-style devices was reclassified under restricted use. Still, many veterans who had served as field engineers or commandos quietly passed on the practical lessons. Not the weapons themselves, but the thinking behind them. That mindset, turning limitation into strategy, it became a cornerstone of modern survivalism. It's why, early Cold War survival manuals included chapters on terrain denial and environmental defense, terms that, are directly descended from World War II fieldcraft. The trap was gone, but the ingenuity survived. Even today, in modern disaster zones, rescue and defense teams still use the same logic, just in reverse. Instead of, creating hazards, they identify unstable ground-build safe footpaths and use texture and resistance to guide movement. The line between a deadly trap and a safe trail really lies only in intent, and understanding that distinction is what separates practical survival knowledge from wartime cruelty. The story of the erased World War II trap isn't about glorifying brutality. It's about rediscovering lost fieldcraft. It reminds us that, honestly, the most powerful tools in survival and defense come from understanding materials, instincts, and physics, not weapons. The soldiers and civilians who built these traps didn't have modern gear or advanced sensors. What they had was observation, patience, and resourcefulness. For anyone who's serious about home defense or off-grid preparedness, this history holds timeless value. Learn how to read terrain. Study how people move through space. Practice shaping your environment for safety and awareness. Replace the concept of harm with that of control, because in survival, control of the ground really is control of the situation. The step snare may have been erased from training manuals, but its lessons are written in every battlefield and forest trail that shaped modern tactics. Understanding its principles can help build safer, smarter, and more resilient defences without ever setting a single trap. For those who study the forgotten edges of history, this is more than just a story. It's a reminder that the past still guards its secrets in plain sight. If you value uncovering knowledge that others tried to bury, subscribe to In the Beginning and share this video with fellow history enthusiasts. There's far more to discover about the tactics that shaped survival itself.